We're stepping into what could be one of the most pivotal weeks, not just for crypto, but for the entire financial world. This might just be the moment everything shifts. What am I talking about? I believe this could be the week the market comes alive, breaking out in a major way and finally pushing toward higher highs. For weeks, I've been saying this market is primed for an epic alt season. And I mean epic. I truly believe we're on the verge of one of the biggest altcoin rallies in crypto history. The funny thing, most people think it's impossible. That disbelief is exactly why this market is ready to explode. Sentiment is at rock bottom lows. Altcoins have taken a beating, dropping far from their former peaks. But at the same time, we're seeing massive momentum on the adoption front. Big moves are happening under the radar, and the headlines surrounding altcoins are incredibly bullish. Yet, somehow, the majority remains bearish. Seems like the perfect storm to me. Sure, do I think this is the biggest reason for an all-season revival and a market wake-up? Not really. The main driver here is the broader environment. What's happening in TradFi, shifts in the US economy, and even global economic trends. With the M2 money supply breaking out, liquidity is finally starting to flow again, yet all eyes remain glued to the bearish headlines. The trade wars, tariff debates, the ongoing back and forth between China and the US. Meanwhile, few are noticing the hidden bullish forces quietly building momentum behind the scenes. Right now, the market's cautious mood makes sense. Stocks have taken a beating over the last few months, and even crypto has been drenched in a sea of red on both the daily and weekly charts. But let's not overlook the flickers of green. There's something brewing beneath the surface. It's been a tough ride for many older coins lately, and even XRP hasn't been spared. And XRP has been struggling to gain momentum, leaving investors feeling frustrated and impatient. Just take a look at the 7-day performance. It's not exactly inspiring. Sure, the 1-month chart looks a little more promising, but zoom out to January and it's a different story. Since the start of the year, it's been a mix of sell-offs and sideways movement, leaving everyone wondering when the tides will finally turn. We are now closing in on 4 months of sideways, choppy price action, and let's be real, it's testing everyone's patience. Frustration is up, impatience is through the roof, and it's easy to feel stuck. But here's the thing, take a step back, zoom out, look at the bigger picture. For instance, XRP has come a long way, and so have many altcoins. Their charts are shaping up nicely. Sure, waiting isn't fun, we all hate it, but progress is still happening. But right now, the crypto market has everyone talking. Bitcoin sits at $94,000, 0 cents, but last week's close, not exactly impressive. What's really catching my attention, though, is dominance. Bitcoin dominance has been slipping slightly, and on the altcoin season index, we're starting to see the needle shift toward altcoin season, which is exciting. That said, I don't think we're quite there yet. Many people, myself included, have been eager to call the start of alt season, but predicting the exact moment is tricky. Looking at Bitcoin dominance, it's still holding strong at nearly 65%, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I've been keeping a close eye on the quarterly Bitcoin dominance chart, the big picture view. Sometimes you don't need to get lost in the noise of 1 day, 3 day, or even 1 week charts. The macro view often tells you everything you need to know. It's the same with the 3-week charts for altcoins. They're painting a vivid picture. Technically, we're still in a phase where being bullish on altcoins makes sense. Looking at the dominance chart on the quarterly, yes, the 3-month view, there's something fascinating unfolding. A 1096-day pattern. If this holds true, we could be gearing up for alt season to kick off sometime around June or July. Exciting, right? Now, how reliable is this? Honestly, it's hard to say. We're working with just one cycle here, so it's not like we've got 3 or 4 repetitions to confirm this pattern. But here's the thing, I'm keeping a close eye on it. If it repeats, June or July could mark the start of alt season. And why do I think this? Well, it's connected to what's coming up this week, which I'll dive into in just a moment. Becoming a Bitcoin, the big takeaway right now is the recent weekly close. Honestly, it wasn't all that bullish. We closed at around 94.3K, but personally, I was hoping for something above 95K at the very least. The ideal scenario, a close above 98K. That would have been the ultimate bullish signal, breaking past the highs from late November or even clearing some of the February peaks. That would have been huge. This red zone on the chart, it's key. It highlights the heavy resistance Bitcoin is facing as we try to flip major support and resistance levels. Right now, though, it's all about watching and waiting to see what unfolds next. Looking at the weekly chart makes things a bit tricky, but zooming into the daily or 3-day chart gives more clarity. My gut says this lower zone will come into play between roughly 88.4K and 92K. This week could be the turning point depending on the announcements. If we really think about it, there's a good chance we'll see a dip back to the recent lows before things start to stabilize. Picture this, a quick slide down followed by a steady climb into the red zone where we'd likely see a lot of back and forth movement. This choppy action could carry us through June as we wait to see what unfolds next. Now let's dig into that a bit more, because I'm sure by now you're wondering what's actually going on. What's driving all of this? Well, buckle up, because some major events are on the horizon this week and they're bound to shake things up. First up, the S&P Global Services PMI data drops Monday alongside the ISM non-manufacturing PMI. But the real spotlight lands on Wednesday with the Fed's interest rate decision and the all-important press conference. That's the big story this week. Sure, the other events move the market, but let's be real, nothing hits harder than the Fed. All eyes are on Chair Powell as he faces mounting pressure to cut rates, fueled in part by recent pushes from Trump. We've already shared our trade ideas with premium members, gotta love the perks, but the core focus remains, what's the Fed's next move? With the market holding its breath, it's shaping up to be a pivotal week. The big question is, do we see a rate cut in May or June? This ties directly into what makes Bitcoin so fascinating. If there's no rate cut this week, we'll likely see a sell-off, an opportunity to scoop up altcoins at bargain prices during the dip. Honestly, I'm okay with some boring price action for now. It sets the stage for a potential June rate cut that could ignite a surge to the upside. So why am I keeping such a close eye on this week's decision? Because if there's no rate cut, it signals they're sticking to their current plan. The reason I'm so laser focused right now is simple. Every headline I've read lately screams the same thing. Prepare to be let down by the Fed this week. Why? Because they're not planning to cut rates despite all the noise. And honestly, this is why the whole rate cut conversation gets so overhyped. Headlines tell us what to expect. Then the Fed does the opposite. But could this week be different? Should we actually get exactly what's been forecasted? Maybe. Anything's possible. Still, I believe this is one of the most critical moments to pay attention to, and here's why. The market could take a massive hit based on what happens. Let me break it down. Right now, we're seeing headlines like Fed's Powell to defy Trump and hold rates steady, and Fed to push back against rate cut calls. But just days ago, the bond market was shouting something else entirely. Treasury's Besant says Fed should cut rates. Besant even highlighted the growing gap between Treasury yields and the Fed's rate. The tension is building, and this could be a defining moment for the market. Two-year yields often reflect the bond market's expectations for the Fed, but Besant is keeping his eye on the 10-year yields. The big question, will the Fed surprise both Trump and Besant by holding steady this month and postponing cuts to next month? It's definitely on the table. Here's where it gets interesting. This week's Fed rate decision shows 97.2% of analysts expecting no change in rates, while a slim 2.8% are betting on a cut. But let's not jump to conclusions. Just because the majority says no cut doesn't mean we'll see the opposite. It's never that predictable. In my view, a rate cut this month is unlikely, but come June, I'd wager the odds shift in favor of one. Here's why this matters. Let's take a look at the monthly inflation chart. Back in September, we saw a 2.4% inflation forecast, which ended up matching the actual rate. Then inflation climbed to around 3% by January, only dropped back down to 2.4% recently. So why is 2.4% such a big deal? Well, back in September, when inflation hit this level, the Fed responded with a bold move, cutting rates by 0.5 point. What made this fascinating was the market's reaction, sparking ripples no one quite expected. The market has already been showing strong bullish momentum. Take a look at this Bitcoin chart. It's the same one I just mentioned, but let's dive deeper. Back in March, we saw a clear market top, followed by a long, drawn-out period of frustrating sideways movement that lasted until September. Now, fast forward to today, here we are in a very familiar situation. The most recent top was in December, and since then, Bitcoin has been stuck in sideways action for about 139 days. For comparison, the sideways pressure back in March lasted around 156 days, with the actual bottom forming after roughly 145 days. Here's where it gets interesting. I believe Bitcoin has already bottomed out. While we don't have to stick rigidly to historical timeframes, one pattern stands out. Despite lower lows, Bitcoin is now showing higher lows and higher highs, echoing the price action from March. This setup feels eerily similar to what we saw leading into September's breakout. The big question now is, do we see a Fed rate cut like the one we got back in September? Back then, the market didn't react immediately. First, we saw a quick surge upward, followed by a dip to the lows, and then another rally to the highs. That's when things started to shift. At that point, we began building bullish momentum, breaking through the key highs from July and eventually surpassing the highs for the entire year. That's the kind of action we're watching for here, clearing these critical levels. First, we aim for the near-term highs, which could serve as this year's version of those pivotal July highs. But it all comes down to timing. Will we see the rate cut this week, or will it wait until June? Personally, I'm rooting for a June rate cut. Why? Because it aligns perfectly with my theory of alt season kicking off in late June and heating up into early July. Here's the exciting part. If that happens, Bitcoin could make a massive move. Picture this. Bitcoin dips down to retest some lows, maybe in the high 80K range, and then it rockets past $160,000 0 cents. My initial target is $150 0 cents K, but hey, if we hit $160 0 cents K, I'm not complaining. It reminds me of past patterns. After a small sell-off, we see a slow climb and then suddenly, boom, a major impulse upward. It's that kind of explosive growth that makes this whole market so thrilling. If this plays out, I'll be more than ready to ride the wave. During this time, Bitcoin dominance is expected to decline, which, as I mentioned, supports my theory that alt season could kick off towards the end of June and roll into early July. But everything hinges on this week. If the Fed announces a rate cut on Wednesday, forget waiting until late June. Alt season could arrive much sooner. Typically, alt season only lasts about 3 to 6 months from its official start to its peak, so timing is key. Sure, plenty of people are skeptical, saying alt season won't happen or the Fed is done with rate cuts for the year. Everyone's got their own take, right? But here's my perspective on how I see things playing out. Let's see who's right. I'm totally okay with no rate cut in May. Let's hold off until June. By late June, alt season kicks off and we ride Bitcoin's fifth wave, surging past 130K, maybe even 150K. That's where the cycle wraps up. Sounds good, right? And of course, during that time, XRP will be stealing the show, going absolutely parabolic and smashing key targets. Everyone's happy, profits are rolling in, and it's the perfect ending to an epic run. Who wouldn't be on board with that? Does it sound too good to be true? Well, here's the thing. It hasn't exactly lived up to the hype. Just take a look at Bitcoin's price action during this whole sideways grind. While Bitcoin's been stuck in this chop zone, altcoins have been hitting rock bottom, markets are getting wrecked, and major hacks are piling up left and right. You're being told, hey, alt season is coming, big gains ahead, easy money. But let's be real. The truth is, it's tough to time the market perfectly. Hitting that sell button, locking in profits, and doing it at just the right moment, it's no walk in the park. But here's the good news. Opportunities are on the horizon. We're on the brink of a massive opportunity in the market. Bitcoin pushing past 100K, Bitcoin dominance dipping, and altcoins absolutely skyrocketing. It all ties back to what the Fed does next. As shown clearly on this chart, that last rate cut in September was a game changer. The price action was already looking strong with a higher low, but that move sparked a higher high off the August peak. Then we smashed through another higher high from July, clearing all of 2024's highs, dating back to November. That's the kind of momentum we're watching for now, and it could be the spark for something huge. This week is going to be critical. Buckle up, stay focused, and most importantly, avoid playing with leverage. It's not worth the risk. If you're fired up for what's ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more free content. Big moves are coming. Stay sharp. Peace out.